Boom, we have the next strategic Bitcoin reserve, folks. Let's fucking go. Arizona has just approved the second strategic Bitcoin reserve in the USA. And Donald Trump says he's going to make a mega announcement today. Now it's really taking off. Smash that like button right away and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, so we can shoot Bitcoin to Valhalla. People need to realize what's happening here. And Bitcoin is shooting up to over 98,000 US dollars at the time of recording. Then for you, it's somehow around 2 or 3 in the morning or something. It might be that when you see this video, Bitcoin is even higher because what's happening right now is massive. I had actually already recorded the entire video because we have more bullish news, but we'll get to that later. First, let's focus on the 2 massive things that have emerged very recently. I also mentioned this to you yesterday. Hey, the likelihood that other states will now create strategic Bitcoin reserves is very, very high. And I said yesterday that it will probably be Arizona or Texas. I was leaning more towards Texas than Arizona, but now we have Arizona, which was actually the first to act. By the way, Texas has also made further progress. It's possible that their strategic Bitcoin reserve will also go through in the next few days. But here we have it in black and white. Arizona will be the second state in the USA to establish a strategic Bitcoin reserve. This means they can now buy Bitcoin here. Oh, crazy. I just realized at this moment, Arizona is actually the state that initially rejected the strategic Bitcoin reserve. Check this out. It was Hobbs, Katie Hobbs or something like that, who rejected the whole thing here. There was a report just a few days ago that the governor blocked the Bitcoin reserve. I just confused Arizona with another state at first. I just came from the beach and saw this and immediately made a video. So, sorry if I wasn't entirely accurate with the info, but this is even more intense. This means that Governor Katie Hobbs, who initially vetoed it, has now signed the thing. This means that she must have been orange-pilled by someone here, or something. A lot of people told me that the reasoning she gave, that Bitcoin wasn't a tested asset and so on, is absolute nonsense. And this means that Arizona can probably allocate up to 5%, just like with the last reserve strategy that was passed here, or rather the first one, because this is also from the Satoshi Action Fund.
And it's probably exactly the same structure here.
So, I assume they can invest up to 5% in Bitcoin here. In the strategic Bitcoin reserve, it means you can now turn dormant dollars, that is, useless, pointless dollars, into digital gold, as a win for fiscal. Yes, responsibility here in Arizona, or for fiscal responsibility. How do you say that?
Responsibility is something like, yes, I think responsibility is indeed the right word here.
A crazy Dennis Porter is posting here too. A crazy Dennis Porter is also posting here right now to bring some clarity. The SB 1025, that was the law. That was vetoed here, and HB 2049 has now been signed. So crazy. So they basically just presented the wrong bill here, and then they signed the other one. Or maybe something still needs to be changed, I don't know. Here in Arizona, they also had a situation where the governor blocked everything because of some story, some political issue, blocking all the laws. And therefore, it's all the more surprising, all the more incredible that this is going through here. I just skimmed over this again, and it actually says here that Bitcoin cannot be actively purchased. However, you are allowed to sell other digital assets and transfer 10% into the state budget. So, I'm not entirely sure if you can directly buy Bitcoin here or if it can somehow be converted. But you can also, for example, confiscate Bitcoin and hold it in the state reserve. I need to take a closer look at it, but there are definitely some restrictions. And then we actually had the announcement here that tomorrow morning at 10 o'clock, a big press conference will be held in the Oval Office regarding an important trade agreement with representatives of a large and highly respected nation-state. The first of many. And that's what Donald Trump says, so apparently the big announcement will come tomorrow. And now we'll switch over. I had already recorded the video before, so this is basically just live update with the massive things that have happened now. But now even more intense things have happened. Take a look at this. Donald Trump is now saying something that is very, very good for the markets. Let's take a look at that. Additionally, Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent says that the USA wants to be the leader in digital assets, aiming to be the leading place here. There are leaks about how many Bitcoin Donald Trump owns. And folks, buckle up, this is really intense. And we have a mega revelation from Cantor Fitzgerald, the company in which Howard Lutnick, the US Secretary of Commerce, is also involved. They have an enormous amount of MicroStrategy here. This will really blow you away. Things aren't looking too bad here at the moment. I mean, just take a look at this. If we rise to 101,000 US dollars, we flip Google. At 140,000 US dollars, we flip Nvidia. At 150,000 US dollars, we flip Apple. At 164,000 US dollars, we flip Microsoft. For gold, you'll need a bit more. Only over $1 million. But Bitcoin is really on its way to establishing itself among the top assets in the world, and is increasingly catching up to gold. We recently had a statement from Donald Trump where he said that he is lifting the global restrictions on chip exports. And this is very, very important. He initially imposed these chip restrictions, and some companies really got into trouble because of it. I mean, chips have become such an essential component now. Check out the sun, ultra bullish. That's already a great sign. Valhalla coming soon. Also, chips have simply become such an essential part of the global industry now, and it also brings more security to the markets. I mean, this isn't a mega story. He also mentioned that the mega announcement will be coming soon, before Monday. We need to keep a close eye on that. He definitely didn't mean this with the mega announcement. That can't have been it. And for now, it brings a bit more security. I mean, Bitcoin reacted slightly positively to it. Not crazily positive, but at least slightly positive. Trump says here that the economy is booming and that the economy is doing very, very well. And the economy will boom in a way we've never seen before. So that's always very, very interesting. Donald Trump sometimes says things that are different from what the Fed says. The Fed is more like, okay, hey, we need to look at the employment data, which is SOSO. And yeah, inflation data is also SOSO. So we have to wait and see. It's not yet the case that we can say the economy is doing extremely well, but rather it's more in a stagflation mode. That means increased inflation risk, increased potential economic problems that are coming our way. And then we had the leak here, and it's really very, very important. We also had Eric Trump's speech here at the Dubai conference. He really said some very, very intense things. I also made a video about it where he said that everyone who doesn't invest in Bitcoin, all the banks and such, will be rug pulled and will disappear into irrelevance. Just like the ECB said, Bitcoin will disappear into irrelevance. He says that the banks that don't invest in Bitcoin and crypto will disappear here, and he actually said something else as well. I didn't catch that at all. I only found out about it afterward. He says, I love Bitcoin. I believe in it as digital gold. I own a lot of it and Trump owns a lot of it. So that's quite significant because we now know very clearly that Eric Trump and Donald Trump own a lot of Bitcoin. It was suspected for a very long time, and David Bailey once leaked it at some conference. I even made a video about it back then. I already said back then, hey, we now know Donald Trump probably has Bitcoin, but now we know for sure. So Donald Trump hasn't said it himself. Eric Trump has, and he would know, being Donald Trump's son. And that's just crazy because Donald Trump is on our side. Eric Trump is on our side. Eric Trump and Donald Trump want to pump up the markets. They also benefit from the rising Bitcoin price. That means you always have to look at what the incentives are. Does someone have the incentive to dump or pump Bitcoin? And often, for example, if people don't own Bitcoin, don't really have an incentive to pump the price. I mean, it's not necessarily a politician's job to pump Bitcoin, right? But I mean, if the Trumps are pumping Bitcoin, we'll gladly take that. And I know there were controversies, for example, people saying, yeah, it's stupid that they're pumping Bitcoin. And there was some criticism from the Democrats saying that we're doing insider trades and insider deals here. Donald Trump made so much money with all his scam projects and so on. And Eric Trump also says here, Bitcoin will grow exponentially in the coming years. This is a big bet of mine personally. So that's pretty intense. That means he's not saying it will grow linearly, but rather exponential growth. This would also mean that the diminishing return theory would be overturned. That means the best returns might still be ahead of us, so we have a kind of S-shaped adoption. We often see this with disruptive technology, that it starts off very, very slowly. And then there's what's called the chasm. And once the chasm is crossed, many technologies never manage to cross the chasm, But once it's crossed and there's a certain momentum, then there's the explosion upwards, the exponential. Or, yes, exponential. Explosion upwards, And if they assume that it really is like that, then it makes sense to have Bitcoin here, And what was really, really intense in this context is what we see here. Here we see Howard Lutnick, CEO of Cantor Fitzgerald. I'm not even sure if he's still the CEO now. I think the Baron is the CEO now, his son here. But I'm not sure if that's true. In any case, Cantor Fitzgerald has now invested 39.2% of the top stake of the company in MicroStrategy. Probably nothing. Guys, check this out. So they have more MicroStrategy here than NVIDIA, than Tesla, than here IBIT. They also have IBIT. Hey, how crazy is that? I just noticed that. If we add up IBIT and MicroStrategy here, then Cantor Fitzgerald's balance sheet feels like it's almost 50% Bitcoin. That means they don't have direct Bitcoin exposure. They don't buy Bitcoin directly on a hardware wallet. I always say, get yourself a hardware wallet, get yourself a TREZOR hardware wallet. I'll put a link down here again to a TREZOR hardware wallet so you can store your Bitcoins easily, securely, and simply without third-party risk. But Cantor Fitzgerald just has 50 freaking percent. Bitcoin exposure, and Cantor Fitzgerald is one of the most relevant investment houses worldwide. Howard Lutnick says he has 100 million in Bitcoin, and after the bull run, it will be billions. And that's the intense part. Howard Lutnick wants to pump up the price. Donald Trump wants to pump up the price.
Of course, we all want to pump up the price too.
So hit the like button, then we can pump up the price even faster, right? Share the video and hit the subscribe button. The more it's shared, the more traction it gains. Here, the faster we can pump up the Bitcoin price, of course. But that's really intense. The incentives are simply on our side. Here. That means the incentives are not against us, but the incentives of the powerful players here are for us. BlackRock is also buying more and more Bitcoin. That means if BlackRock is buying more Bitcoin and the 13F filings have now come out, it also means that BlackRock has an increasing incentive to pump Bitcoin up. Now, the strategic Bitcoin reserves in the USA are coming in north, where was it again?
I can't remember which state that was. Is the strategic Bitcoin reserve being approved now?
It was New Hampshire, exactly. New Hampshire. There, the strategic Bitcoin reserve is now being approved. And what's even more intense is that we now have the 50% allocation from Cantor Fitzgerald. And Cantor Fitzgerald is also invested in Jack Myller's new company, 21 Capital, which wants to accumulate more Bitcoin than Strategy. Then Livik's company joins in, which also wants to be the leading player. Here, we have Metaplanet, which is buying Bitcoin endlessly. Michael Saylor said something just yesterday. I might need to make an extra video about it, that somehow 7,000 companies or something, I think it was 7,000, will buy Bitcoin in the near future. There was this conference where he reported a bit, Bitcoin for companies. And there, really, he rattled off one company after another. Here we are taking Bitcoin off the balance sheet, and here too, Bitcoin off the balance sheet. And then some Indians came and said, yes, we're also buying Bitcoin. And then some people came, nobody knows them, but they just go ahead and buy 5,000 Bitcoin, 1,000 Bitcoin, 2,000 Bitcoin. In France, one company, the best performing stock in France, is also a Bitcoin company, which is basically doing the whole thing in a Michael Saylor copycat style. And the CEO just said on TV, okay, Bitcoin is going to 10 million. Let's fucking go. And then the US Secretary of the Treasury, Scott Bessent, comes into play. And now listen up, no joke, to what Scott Bessent has to say. Here the incentives are on our side again.
We believe that the United States should be the premier destination for digital assets, and as members of this committee and the Senate are attempting to do, create good market structure around that, so that U.S. best practices are used around the world.
And that's really the point, right, is having American U.S. best practices to sort of set the pace for others to follow, rather than us trying to fill in the holes that others that may be created as others set that pace.
Yes, sir. And also that digital assets are an important source of innovation that will drive that can drive usage of the U.S. dollar around the world, as with stablecoin legislation. There is speculation that there may be up to $2 trillion of demand over the next few years for U.S. government securities from digital assets.
So, did you hear that? It's really crazy. And then the Bitcoin price is actually still under 100,000 US dollars. So that's really an absolute gift. Anyone who doesn't have Bitcoin now is basically betting against the USA, betting against Donald Trump, against Scott Bessent, against Howard Lutnick, and so on, because they are all positioning themselves massively long on Bitcoin. Scott Bessent is now saying, hey, we want to be the leading destination, the leading place in the world for digital assets. So it's not just about Bitcoin, it also concerns crypto, it also concerns stablecoins. And the EU just says, yeah, hold my beer. I'm not in the game. I'd rather sleep through it. I'll just take a quick winter nap. And in 10 years, when the USA has somehow accumulated 1 or 2 million Bitcoin, okay, then maybe we'll start buying Bitcoin at 1 million, at 2 million, at 3 million, at 4 million. So it's just intense. And he also says, okay, stablecoins are also a very, very big part. I'm always a bit skeptical about stablecoins because stablecoins are not a tool for freedom, but a tool for surveillance. But stablecoins are, of course, something that can save the USA, but because they can simply drive the demand for US government bonds. He also says here, potential demand of 2 trillion, although I find that a bit low because what are 2 trillion in Treasury purchases? I mean, the USA needs much, much more demand for Treasuries than just 2 trillion. They need real new buyers. Yes, that's what's really, really exciting here. So
I don't really understand how one can be bearish at the moment. I just don't get it. Feel free to explain it to me in the comments below. There are always a few bears who say I'm exaggerating and so on, but I don't see it that way at all. When I look at the sun here, it also looks very, very bullish. Just like the sun is going up here to the moon, hopefully Bitcoin will also take off soon. Write in the comments below what you think about it. How do you currently see the situation? And if you still want to buy Bitcoin, then put a link down here to 21 Bitcoin. Here you can easily and securely buy simple Bitcoin. You know, everyone is potentially on the Bitcoin boat. Trump, Bessent, Lutnick, and so on. And anyone who isn't on board now might miss the Bitcoin rocket. So hold on tight. Yes, and make sure you fill your bags. Somehow. But of course, this is not financial advice. You can also, like Olaf Scholz, put it in a savings account. That's also possible. And then get rug pulled hard. So folks, check it out. Use the code BitcoinHotel. See you. Until then, peace out.